Welcome, everybody, to Let's Talk Computer Science, a podcast dedicated to talking about the past, present, and future of computer science. This podcast is made possible by our friends at Rex Academy. Be sure to check out their amazing CS platform, including courses on cybersecurity, app development, and everyone's favorite buzzword, AI. Don't have a CS teacher? That's quite all right. Rex is now providing remote instructors as a part of their platform, which is pretty cool. Be sure to check them out at rex.academy. And today on the show, I'm excited to have Angelin Thompson. She's the Director of Expanded Academic Learning at Denver Public
Thank you. I'm
Schools. Welcome
happy
to
to
the
be
show,
here.
Angelin. Before I get to your origin story, I got to ask, because this expanded academic learning is kind of a different type. I haven't heard that as a department yet. Tell me
Yes.
exactly kind of
So,
what is that?
as you know, after the pandemic, there was a lot of students who had not been in school ever and had started their educational career at home. There were students who had not been in schools for a year or more. And so there really was a need to address learning loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so my team was created at
Right.
that time to help address some of those issues through bringing into schools expanded learning opportunities that can help accelerate learning and alleviate some of the learning loss that we saw. So our team does a lot of during school activities, STEM programming, high impact tutoring, um, social emotional support, varied academic enrichment activities that can happen during the school day. We also do some after school programming as well as summer programming for students to try to address some of the learning loss due to COVID-19.
And this is at Denver Public Schools. And I want to point out, this is awesome. So even though we're kind of quote unquote through the pandemic, the program itself, it sounds like is still, you found it pretty useful. So the school district said, yeah, we used it to kind of help us through that period, but now you're still around. So you're still being used kind of all over the place, right? And
It's
Denver's
not
not
small.
small, if I
And so
remember
if you
correctly.
think about, I'm going to use an analogy that probably is not the most popular. If you think about Social Security, and it was started for a reason,
Okay.
and it stayed. And
Yeah.
now, if you take it away, people are going to be very upset with you. Our team is kind of like Social Security.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you've built, and I think what's happened around a lot of the country is that they found that there were certain students that learned differently, not just necessarily sit and get, but in
Yes.
these extended programs. And then it's kind of been sad to see like a lot of schools shifted back to, all right, well, that's great, but that's over now. So like you said, learning loss, we got to get everyone caught up. We're going to accelerate through all this. So throw them back in school and we're going to throw back more stuff at them. But you all didn't, in fact, you kind of double down on that because you just mentioned you do stuff after school. I imagine you're probably quite busy this summer.
I,
Do you
I
get a summer
actually
break or
took
no?
3 days off last week, so I got a few days off.
Slow down. That's it. That's all you get off
It's
is 3 days,
okay,
and then tutor. Yeah, and are those summer programs in
they are
person
in
completely, or
person
are they a mix, or
completely.
how does that work?
So it's very
Okay,
exciting
and
to
then
think about all of the things that we've been able to do with some of the federal funds that were pushed into schools to help address some of the pandemic ills, if you would call them. And so our team has benefited from being able to use some of that funding to look for things that really work and to pilot some things and to see what's effective. And DPS is very smart in thinking about ways to sustain this once the federal funds go away. So there are things we will continue to do and things that we won't, but we were able to learn a lot and collect a lot of data and research around what is working, what kids enjoy, and what they don't. And so a lot of those things that we typically would use our budget for before, we will stop doing to do more of the things that we've learned are actually better for kids.
and I was going to ask about the funding because I know that
Yeah.
ESSER funds are drying up, and so there's nervousness about that. But it sounds like you guys have already kind of identified as a school district, like we're going to keep components of this. What are the demographics of the students you serve primarily?
It's
It's a pretty wide
extremely
range of
diverse.
kids?
The highest population of students in Denver Public Schools are Latinx or Hispanic. Then next to them would be our white students. Our Native American students are very small percentage. Our Asian American students are a very small
Mm.
percentage, and then our African American students would be like right behind our white students. Yeah.
Okay. Let me, and before we go any further, I almost forgot to ask you, like, I want to hear your origin story too, because, I'm sure you didn't start out being an expanded
I did
academic
not.
learning
I did
director.
not.
so, so tell me a little bit about your background, your origin story, and then kind of, was there a moment in your life where you were like, okay, computers, technology, learning, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe this is a good fit, like a light
Yeah,
bulb moment. So tell me a
so
little bit about your
I am
backstory.
originally from Jackson, Mississippi. I grew up there, went to high school there, went to college in Chicago, came out of college and was a teacher for quite a while. I actually taught elementary, middle, and high school. And
Wow.
after teaching for so long and having so many people visit my classroom, so many people said, you really should go into administration. You should come out of the classroom because you need to spread the knowledge. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to be with my babies. And so, strangely enough, I let someone talk me into coming out of the classroom and went into an administrative role. I had the opportunity to be an assistant principal. Hated every second of that because that job is one of those
I
jobs
love
where
it.
you have to deal with all of the hard things.
Oh yeah, they give you the bad. You
Yeah,
don't
you
give you
don't
any of the
get to
fun
be
stuff.
around the joy of learning as much. So that really wasn't for me.
Yeah,
So I came out of that and started being a teacher coach, which I absolutely loved. Worked on a team that was the Teacher Pathways and Development team for Denver Public Schools, where I got to go in and do some really creative things. We started some teaching academies where teachers that were training to be teachers can come in and work in Title I schools that they typically are hired into and get that experience with a lot of support. So that was a lot of fun. And then I became the director of that team. After that, I became the director of this team, which is totally different world for me because most of my experience is either in teaching or coaching teachers, not
teachers. Yeah,
providing additional supports for kids, which is amazing because I get to be very creative and think, about all of the things that are out there that I can help expose kids to. Because, and I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox, we
let's go.
continue to teach kids in a way that we were taught 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And that just doesn't work for this generation of kids because they have access to so much. Anything they really want to
Right.
learn, they can take their phones out, which they all have, and Google it or search for it. Or like they literally have access to the world at their fingertips. So then to bring them into classrooms and say, sit here, open this book, write on this paper, they're looking at us like, no, we write in text bites. What are you talking about? And so I think that we have to start re envisioning education and thinking about ways that we can teach the kids in front of us and not the kids we want to have in front of us, if that makes sense.
I love it. Yeah, and I think what's interesting is, and I don't know if you, and it sounds like so you were kind of at really a crux point when the pandemic hit too, with this department and the formation. I always felt like I felt like the pandemic was going to change a lot of the things you just talked about. Like, oh, the 30 or 40 or 50 years we've been teaching, we're finally going to have the shift happen. You're one of the few cases I've actually heard of where it didn't go all the way back to normal. It actually, you kept a component of in there. I think we're on the precipice of another change with AI, which we'll get into here in a second, where it's starting us as teachers to re-examine again, what are we teaching, because if kids have access
Right.
to these tools now, which again, whether we block it
That's
or
right.
not, they're going to, like you said, they're
It's a
going to have
gift
it on
and
their
a
phones.
curse.
How do we, yeah, a gift and a curse, how do
Right.
we manage all that? So let's go down that pathway too. What's your thoughts, kind of an overview thought of AI, and
Yeah.
then are there ways that you're already seeing it
So,
being used?
so I think that AI is fascinating. I also think that it is scary. I think that in a lot of ways, it is extremely helpful to a lot of people, especially people who may have gone through schools and came out and still were not literate. It's an exceptional way to help them to be able to access all of the things that they may have not have been able to access before. My concern is that it is also creating a handicap, I think, for students that are leaning too heavily on it
Mm,
and are not learning how to write a paper or do the things that they normally would learn how to do. I think that the art of writing should not go away. And I'm afraid that AI is helping it to go away a little bit. Like they have these programs that, like, if you want to write a love letter to your spouse, you can say, write a love letter to Amy, and it will draft a beautiful love letter for you that had nothing to do with your real thoughts or feelings. And you can pass it off to Amy and look like a superstar.
It's like you've been in my house. We have these little cards that we get. My wife and I have been doing these like little dating cards where you're like, oh, it's like this one says karaoke or something. But the one that we had a few weeks ago was like write a poem to each other. And I love to write. And so I love to write poetry and anything else. And so for me, I was writing it out. My wife was like, I'm struggling. And I was like, I know what you're going to do. And sure enough, she used ChatGPT to write her and got it started. And then to be fair, she actually went through and said, now she made it
Yes,
more personal. And I thought, okay, well, that's because she already had
that's
the scaffolding,
exactly
is what you
right.
call the art of writing already.
And students don't
Right.
have that yet. So
And
they're going
so,
to just turn in. And I
right.
some of my professors during my master's program were complaining about not being able to know when someone used it or when they didn't. And I'm sure there will be
Right.
programs that come out to help you figure that out soon, because it's a
There
capitalistic
are.
society.
There are
So,
already.
but
Oh yeah.
I'm concerned that part of education, I think, has to be us not like sitting and getting and lecturing kids, but it has to be us being there as facilitators of learning, not managers of kids. We have to be there to be
Yeah.
safety guardrails, kind of like, when little kids go bowling and they have the little lanes that just keep the ball in the lane. They're not going to be rolling strikes, but at least the ball won't be a gutter ball. That's what we have to be for kids. We have to be those bumper guards and help them learn the right ways to use technology, to use AI in a safe way that doesn't also dumb down America.
Right. And eventually the guardrails go away and you have to learn how to do it on your own. And I think that's so
Exactly.
important. The best analogy I've heard so far was I had a friend of mine tell me that she said that, it's like, we all know how to walk. And I think that's important. I mean, those of us that are able to walk, we can walk, and we learn
Mhm.
that at an early age, when you're less than, sometimes less than 1 year old. And then over time, you learn that there's technology that can help you get further. So bikes can you can go faster, a car, a plane, a rocket ship. But if you never learn how to walk, when you do get that plane to go somewhere, and then when you land,
Right,
what are you going to do? I mean, you still have to know the basics of what you're doing. And I think with writing, what you're talking about, you're hitting me right in the heart with that. And I think that's important. We still need to know those
right,
foundational elements. And then also, I like that you're excited, but also with the lens of like, let's also make sure we're still
right,
teaching those things, right? I think that's
right.
so important. In the role you're in, is there any tools that you've encountered recently that have, because AI is, honestly, I know it's been big in the last few months, but it's been around for a while, and there's actually a lot of tools out there that are using some in the background, sometimes AI, to help us, like with
Yeah.
data and analytics and things like that. Is there anything you've come across that you found like, oh, this is kind of a neat way to maybe save some teachers some time, but also get you to know the students better?
Yeah, so there are a lot of programs now, curriculums that are coming out that are solely technology based, and they have these like systems that adapt with kids so
Yeah.
that kids are learning at their own pace and not us kind of teaching to the middle. So it teaches a kid where they are and helps move them beyond that, which is something that one teacher, if you have 30 kids in a classroom, there's no way you can meet the needs of all 30
Right.
kids at the level that they're at. These programs make it possible to have at least a portion of the day where kids are being exposed to technology, which is part of the present and the future, as well as being exposed to things that are not at their frustration level, but are building them to their instructional level, which I think is genius. And I'm really excited to see like what that can do for kids and for students.
Yeah, we've seen these algorithms for years where, kids, the game based algorithms where kids will play games and they don't get
Yep,
frustrated, but they keep going, they
yep.
keep wanting to push through, right?
And they
And
love
then
it.
what you're talking about is like, yeah, and they want to continue to kind of achieve more. So what you're talking about is like is this adaptability to say, okay, we're going to push you a little bit, but not so much that you're just like, I'm going to give up
Exactly.
completely. You want to be challenged,
And these
and I
games are
think,
so
and you and I've been,
like vibrant and brilliant, and our kids love TV, love YouTube, love video games.
Interaction.
And when
Yeah.
you put it in that type of format, they're like, oh, I know how to do this. I can do well at
Yeah.
this. And never, ever, ever, even when I was a kid and we were playing Nintendo and Sega Genesis and all those things, we never
Yes.
wanted to stop, even though we kept losing. We were like, no, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get to the next. We were looking for cheat codes. We were doing all these things. It's the same thing, except they're actually learning skills that seems like it's just fun to them. Like,
I love it.
you
Yeah, the
sugar.
thumbs came out immediately.
Exactly. It's like,
I got sore immediately when you did that because I've had the sore
yes,
thumbs.
it's like
Yes.
a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's like that.
I
You,
love it. Yeah, I think that's the balance that we have to do now in school because you've hit on so many points. But I mean, the gamification is fun, and the kids are going where they're at and what they're interested in, and getting them to learn in that way. But at the same time, there's this human element, like you were saying earlier, like as a teacher, getting to know the kids, getting to know like where their strengths are, and and I think the marriage of those
yeah,
two is kind of the direction we're
it's
heading in.
amazing.
Um,
You can
yeah,
literally
you
look
could
at
overdo it one way or the other,
you
but
can
yeah,
look at what the student did wrong. Like you can watch video of what the kid actually did while playing these games or doing these programs and pinpoint exactly where their error was. So you know what skill you need to teach them because that's the thing that's keeping them from getting the right answer. That's amazing.
and I never had that. I never had that as a teacher. I mean, as a teacher way back in the day when I taught, I mean, you'd get the
Yeah,
paper,
right.
you'd get the end
You can
product, but you'd
assume.
never get a snapshot into the process,
And we used
right?
to say,
And that's
show
giving
your
us a
work,
snapshot into
show
that.
your work, show your work.
Show your work, yeah.
So
Now it's going to capture
that's
for us,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
That's awesome. Well, where can people find out more about you and the great work that you're doing?
So you can always go to our website, denverpublicschools.org. You could also email me, LinkedIn, all of those things, Angelin Thompson at Denver Public Schools. My email address is Angelin_Thompson at dpsk12.net. Always happy to hear from people and share the great things that we're doing. This summer, we were able to do some work with Rex Academy. We offered computer science to young people, which was amazing. I'm super excited about our partnership with Rex Academy because they're so easy to partner with. Like, if there's changes that need to be made, they jump right in and make changes. This summer, for example, we had one of the teachers, instructors was not able to be there. So we needed a sub. Sandy, who is like the top of
Everywhere.
Rex Academy,
Yes.
jumped in to teach the class.
Wow.
You don't find
Yeah,
that.
she's
She
amazing.
is, I love her so much.
Yeah.
And to see women in computer science and STEM and all of these things, like little girls need to see that. Little boys need to see that. Like there's a place for all of us and we all have to build these skills because the jobs of the past have gone away. We have to start preparing kids for the jobs that will be available. We also need to help them become critical thinkers and free thinkers and entrepreneurs and explorers and all these things that traditionally, especially for black and brown kids, we've not done. So we push them out into the world without the skills they need to be successful. And then we complain that they're,
Right.
out in the streets or robbing people or ending up in prisons. And I'm like, well, that's because the malpractice of education. Like we've been failing kids for generations now, and we have to stop doing that. So my team is really invested in bringing in partners like Rex Academy to help build the skills that we know students are going to need in this century to be successful. And so I'm really super excited to be working with Rex Academy and other vendors that are offering, these fantastic opportunities for kids to like get excited about these things and want to go into these fields and learn more about what they can do and what they can create. Think about it. They've got these like robots now that can go in and do surgery. So a surgeon can be
Right.
across the country and operate an arm of a robot to do surgery on a person in a whole nother country that may not have access to the same type of health care that that you have in a more developed country. Somebody created that. And our kids can do that.
Yeah.
Like they can find cures to cancer. They can help cure HIV and AIDS. They can come up with these things, but we have to give them the foundations and the love of learning to want to do those things.
So many good points that you hit on there. And I think this is also at the core of Rex Academy, who I've known for several years. And what you just said about Sandy is very much why I believe in what they're doing is because she truly believes in access for all students, not just generationally what's happened with students that look more like me are the ones that have the opportunity for this, but what other opportunities can come around from letting all kids have access to it. Like you just
Exactly.
said, a discovery of some sort or a robot that can help cure something. I mean, those are things that we've traditionally like segmented to just a small part of our population. Now we have access to it because of programs like Rex. So right on board with that. Those of y'all that don't know Sandy's story, by the way, at some point you need to do some digging on that. We need to get her
Please
on the
do.
show because she used to host this show, but she does everything.
And then Yuli and like the team, they're just
The whole
amazing,
team.
just amazing. And they're like always available to help troubleshoot, to think about, like we're already talking about what changes we'll make next year to make this even better and more accessible for all kids. So it's very exciting. And I'm happy to be a small part of providing this for kids.
And full disclaimer, even though it is sponsored by Rex Academy, Angelin we did not talk about her bringing this up. It came out because she truly believes in it. And so I thank you for sharing. And again, check out all the great work that she's doing there at the expanded academic learning there at Denver Public Schools. Angelin, thank you so much for being a part
Yeah,
of the show
thanks for
today.
having me. I'm always happy to talk about education. It's one of my passions and it has been for more than 25 years now. So thank you for
I
allowing
can
me.
absolutely, I can absolutely tell just based on how you've reacted to all this. I love it. Thank you so much for all that great work. And thank you for everyone else for being a part of the Let's Talk Computer Science podcast. And of course, our friends, as we mentioned at Rex Academy for making this podcast possible. Be sure to check out their amazing platform at rex.academy. We all know that technology will be a part of our future. And as educators and leaders, it's our role to make sure that all, and I mean all of our students have an opportunity in that future as well. This is Carl Hooker signing off.